He is in total darkness, no shore, no sky. Only the walls of a living prison and the certainty that he is going to die here. Around him there is no light, no way out, only the slow pulse of a creature he cannot see. This is where the story of one man's refusal, and one of the most debated tales in the Bible, reaches its lowest point. And it began with a single command, a voice, a city, a prophet who said no. A prophet named Jonah is told to go to Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, and call its people to turn from their violence and cruelty. Assyria had long been a threat to the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Its armies were known for their brutality. For Jonah, the order is not just difficult, it is unbearable. He does not run because he is afraid of the city. He runs because he cannot accept that his God might show mercy to his enemies. So he turns his back on the command. He goes down to the port of Joppa, finds a ship bound for Tarshish in the opposite direction from Nineveh, pays his fare, and boards. Joppa was a real port on the Mediterranean coast. Tarshish lay far to the west, perhaps in Spain or beyond. The point is clear. He is putting as much distance as he can between himself and the mission. The book of Jonah does not record any dialogue between the prophet and God at that moment. There is no argument, no bargaining. There is a command and a choice. Jonah chooses to leave. He is not hiding from God. He is refusing the mission. What happens next will force him to choose between drowning and obeying. He does not yet know that the sea itself will become the instrument of his return. Out at sea, the weather shifts. A storm rises. The ship is thrown by waves. The crew, seasoned sailors, are terrified. The text says the mariners feared and cried out, each to his God. They throw cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. Jonah goes below deck and falls into a deep sleep. In the midst of the crisis, the one man who knows the cause of the storm is the one man not on deck. The captain has to go down and wake him. The captain finds him and demands that he call on his God. The sailors then cast lots to see who is responsible for the disaster. The lot falls on Jonah. They ask him who he is, where he comes from, and what he has done. He tells them he is a Hebrew and that he worships the God of heaven who made the sea and the dry land. He tells them he is fleeing from that God. The confession is full. He does not soften it. The sailors now know that the storm is not random. It has a cause, and the cause is the man in front of them. The men are even more afraid. They ask what they should do. His answer is stark. Throw him into the sea, and the storm will stop. They resist. The text says they rowed hard to bring the ship back to land, but could not, because the sea grew more and more tempestuous. They do not want to take a man's life. In the end, they do what he asked. They call on the Lord not to hold them guilty for shedding innocent blood, and then they throw him overboard. The storm ceases. The sea grows calm. The sailors are filled with awe. The text says they feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. They had set out with their own gods. They had cast lots to find the guilty man. Now they are worshiping the God of the man they had thrown into the water. Jonah had tried to escape that God. The sea had brought him to the brink of death. Beneath the surface, something else is waiting. The narrative does not say how long he fell, only that the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow him. The Hebrew text calls it a great fish. Later tradition would name it a whale. Either way, the outcome would defy every expectation of survival. He remains inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. In that place of darkness and confinement, Jonah prays. His words, preserved in the book of Jonah, move from distress to remembrance of the temple and of God's deliverance, and to a vow what he has promised he will pay. The prayer is often compared to the Psalms of Lament. It names the crisis, recalls past deliverance, and commits to thanksgiving. But here the setting is not a battlefield or a sickbed. It is the inside of a fish. The detail is never explained. The text does not describe the biology or the logistics. It only states that he was there and that he prayed, and that after 3 days and 3 nights the fish delivered him. The prayer does not ask for rescue in so many words. It acknowledges that he was cast into the deep and that God brought his life up from the pit. When his soul fainted within him, he remembered the Lord. The psalm echoes themes found elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible: the belly of Sheol, the roots of the mountains, the bar closing behind him forever. Yet even there, the narrative insists the Lord heard him. The fish is not the end of the story. It is the turning point. After 3 days and 3 nights, the creature obeys his second command and vomits Jonah onto dry land. He is released alive. Where exactly that was, the text does not say. Only that he was out, and the word of the Lord came to him again: go to Nineveh and proclaim the message that will be given to you. This time, he goes. The man who had fled toward the edge of the known world would now walk into the heart of the empire he had hoped would burn. The text does not describe his journey. It moves straight to the city. What he felt as he crossed into Assyrian territory is left unspoken. Only the message is recorded: in 40 days, Nineveh will be overthrown. The number 40 appears elsewhere in the Bible. 40 days of flood, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days of temptation. Here it is: a window, a deadline, a last chance. The text does not say whether Jonah hoped they would ignore it, or whether he already knew what kind of God he served. Either way, the city does not wait. It acts at once. Nineveh is described as an exceedingly great city, so large that it takes 3 days to walk through. In the ancient Near East, Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, a city of power and terror for the smaller kingdoms around it. Jonah enters, walks for a day, and announces in 40 days Nineveh will be overthrown. The Hebrew suggests a single, repeated proclamation. He does not negotiate. He does not add a call to repent. He states the threat and leaves the rest to the hearers. The response is immediate. The people believe. They declare a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest to the least. The text stresses the scope. The word reached the king of Nineveh. He rises from his throne, covers himself with sackcloth, sits in ashes, and orders that no one human or animal eat or drink. All are to call urgently on God and turn from their evil and from violence. The decree goes out from the palace to the streets. The king does not promise that God will spare them. He only holds out a possibility. Who knows, he says, whether God may yet relent and spare the city. It is an act of humility, not certainty, and he does. When God sees their turning from evil, he relents and does not bring the disaster he had threatened. The narrative gives no timeline for how long the repentance lasted. It only states that God saw what they did and relented. For most tellings of the story, that would be the end. For the book of Jonah, the real conflict is only beginning. The prophet's reaction would reveal what had been driving him from the start. That outcome is what Jonah had feared all along. He is angry. He tells God that he knew this would happen, that God is gracious, merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, and that is why he fled to Tarshish. He would rather have died than see the city spared. Now he asks to die. The anger is not hidden. It is the climax of the book. The prophet who had run from the mission, who had been brought back by the sea and the fish, who had finally spoken the word in Nineveh, cannot accept the outcome. He goes east of the city, makes a shelter, and sits in its shade to see what will become of Nineveh. He has delivered the message. The city has repented. God has relented. And Jonah is sitting there waiting, as if he still hopes for a different ending. God causes a plant to grow over him to ease his discomfort, and Jonah is glad for the shade. Then God sends a worm to attack the plant, and it withers. When the sun rises, God sends a scorching east wind. The sun beats on Jonah's head until he is faint. He asks that he might die. He says it is better for him to die than to live. God's reply is not a comfort. It is a question. God says to him, "You are concerned about the plant, which you did not create or tend, which appeared in a night and perished in a night. And should I not be concerned about Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 people who do not know their right hand from their left, and also many animals?" The book ends there. No reply from Jonah is recorded. The last word is God's question about compassion. The prophet is left with that question. So is the reader. The story does not resolve whether Jonah ever accepted the answer. The story is remembered for the fish, the storm, and the city that repented. At its heart, it is about a man who could not accept that mercy reaches further than he was willing to go. It leaves the reader with a question that still resonates. Who is allowed to receive a second chance? If this look at the full story of Jonah and the whale held your attention, like this video and subscribe for more animated Bible stories and deep dives into ancient texts. The narrative of Jonah has been studied, debated, and retold for centuries. It appears in the Hebrew Bible among the books of the prophets and in the New Testament, where Jesus refers to the sign of Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, linking the prophet's ordeal to the theme of death and restoration. The story has been read in synagogues and churches, in art and in song. It has been used to teach about obedience, about mercy, and about the limits of human willingness to accept both. Scholars have long discussed when the book was written and whether it reflects a specific historical moment or a broader lesson about obedience and compassion. Some place the composition in the centuries after the fall of Nineveh, when the story could be told with irony and moral force. The text itself does not date the events. It simply tells the story, whether read as history, parable, or both. The account is consistent. A prophet who fled was brought back and had to face the scope of the mercy he had been sent to announce. The text does not soften his anger or resolve the final question. If you want more stories like this, like and subscribe for new uploads every week. This remains an unsettling tale of obedience and the reach of grace. The last word is still a question.